know. Our guest this morning is Tracy Brewer Davis. I didn't even realize that was Greg and Judy's daughter until Tracy told me. And I am an admirer of both Greg and Judy. And I just a brief chat with Tracy, we got all excited and all the wonderful things that she's doing. And she's in the right place, I think, at Cassellholme. And she's going to talk about grief and loss, a starting point for hard conversations. So Tracy is a spiritual wellness and cultural support lead at Cassellholme. She spent 20 years previously in the ministry with the people of St. Andrew's Church. And she is a death doula. She is interested in death work and started that journey about 5 years ago. And now she is at Cassellholme. And a death doula, maybe I'll get you to explain that, Tracy, as you get started this morning.
Sure. Well, thank you, Harriet. I love talking about death, and it's really a hard conversation to have with people. So yes, I was in ministry at St. Andrew's. I was in team ministry with Jane Howe for 16 years. And then I was in solo ministry there by myself for the last 4, making a really hard decision to leave last January. It was a difficult transition for me, but now that I'm away from that situation, I can look back and I think it was definitely the right move for me. I was really tired and worn out and not probably as helpful as I wanted to be. So I came to Jamie Lowry, the CEO of Cassellholme, and said, I'm going to make a shift, and I kind of know what I want to do. And he created a job for me that I think is a perfect fit. So leaving St. Andrews was, again, it was hard, and they have a little bit of an archaic rule in the United Church of Canada, which I understand, but don't fully support, because when you leave a congregation, you can't have contact with people from the congregation for a full year. So you work really hard to build community and relationships, and you're with people at their most tender and joyous, and then you leave and you've lost your community. So I work hard at building community for myself in other places. And I desperately miss my St. Andrew's family. So it's been an interesting year, and it's been a really good last kind of 10 months for me at Cassellholme. So at Cassellholme, this job that I have, half of that job is about doing palliative care a little bit better. And the other half of that job is looking at how we invest in our staff. How do we invest in one another? How do we change the culture of the home? Long-term care in Ontario is very difficult. Until I actually began here full-time, I don't think I realized just how difficult it was. We're surrounded constantly by loss and grief and death and sadness and aging bodies. And so it's really hard work to be here. And again, it's not just in North Bay, it's across the province. We are short-staffed. We have worked hard through a pandemic. And we're working hard, I think, slowly, gradually to be better. And I'm really proud of the work that we're just starting to engage in with our senior leadership team and with our staffing groups. So I'm really thrilled to be here with you this morning. As Harriet mentioned, I am a death doula. So about 5 years ago, I said to Jamie again, I would really like to do something different. And I was here working part-time. And he sent me away to the Institute of Traditional Medicine in Toronto for 8 weekends. And I worked hard and learned how I can offer families support in a different way. A death doula is, when you think about a birthing doula, someone that celebrates life, that helps people to figure out what a plan would be for a birth. Death doulas do the same thing. So we help you to plan your death. We help you to think about all the layers and pieces of what that might look like. And then it is a much more holistic kind of approach. It's, I'm certainly not a medical expert by any stretch. I have learned a lot at Cassellholme as we've watched a lot of people die. But a death doula does do it a little bit differently. So we really start to look at those end of life questions that we have, and we help people to hopefully plan what could be called a perfect death. So I'm going to give you an example of what that looked like with my own experience with my dad. So I know a lot of you probably knew my dad. He taught in North Bay for a really, really long time. One of the tools that a death doula uses is a life review. So I sat down with my dad a few years ago before he was really in the thick of dementia and Alzheimer's, and we did a life review. So a life review is a great opportunity for people to take stock of their life, of what was important, what was difficult. It's a great tool for families to use with people who are aging. I don't like that word, but it's the only word that came to mind. Because again, we don't talk about our history, our past. We don't talk about some of those important conversations with our children. And so it was really amazing for me to sit out on their deck and spend a couple of hours with him talking about his life and what it looked like for him, his memories, his thoughts. And we got to a point in the life review where I asked him, I said, what are you fearful of? What is something that scares you? And at that point, he said, I'm really afraid to die. I'm really afraid of what my body's going to do. I'm really afraid of what my death will look like. So what a perfect opportunity to have that conversation with him. And so when we sat and really unpacked what his death could look like, we planned it. We planned it down to every possibility. We talked about what he would want to be smelling, what he would want to be hearing, what he would want to be looking at, possibly who would he want there when he was in that active dying stage, but also who was important for him to have there when he took his last breath. So all of those things, down to, he even said, I want hollyhocks in my room. That's what I want. I want to be looking at hollyhocks. I want to smell something that smells like black licorice. We really did spend a lot of time thinking what it might look like. Well, then he had a horrible fall and was in a state of delirium. And I'll tell you, I've never been more grateful for anything in my life, because he was no longer able to have conversations with us. And so for those 2 weeks in that hospital, we did all those really important things that he wanted. We made sure all of those pieces were there. We made sure that he was smelling what he wanted to smell, and the music was right, and the hollyhocks were there. But again, I really do think from my experience that people really do choose who's going to be with them when they die. And that was a really hard part, because I think he really wanted my mom with him. And she had not left his side. She had slept in that hospital room. And our family doctor came in that morning and said, Judy, you're really tired. You're exhausted, and you need to go home and sleep for a few hours. And she resisted. And Dr. Abasing said, you know what? His breathing is rhythmic. He doesn't have any modeling on his legs. He's really okay. You should go home. And she had only been gone about 10 minutes, and he started to actively die. And so it was him and I, and I think it was really important to him, because I think, again, when we really started to talk about his fears of death, he was really afraid of what his physical body was going to do. And as he had always done, cared and protected for her. And I think he probably thought maybe it was something that I could handle. And so he died very, very quickly, and everything shifted within a matter of minutes. And I feel so blessed that him and I had those really hard conversations. And they're really hard. They really are. But again, when you're in the thick of that, you can't have those conversations. It's too far gone, and it's too late. And that's my message to all of you today, that I hope you, if you take one thing from this, that you start having brave, hard conversations with your families, with your children, with anybody that will listen. I make sure that everybody knows exactly what I want to happen when my life is coming to an end. So those are some of the tools that we use as a death doula. There's some of the things I do with folks here at Cassellholme. We start having those conversations at that first care conference when people move in. So again, because everyone that walks through these doors is palliative. No one's going to be leaving. This the end of life here. And for families, bringing people, as probably some of you know, I know some of you have either experienced loss at Cassellholme, or you are in the thick of it now with us, and it's really difficult. But the sooner we start to have those conversations, the more we can grant those final wishes of people, and we can help with some of that. So,
Tracy,
yeah.
I'm wondering if you don't mind me interrupting. Was Greg aware that he was dealing with dementia?
So as most people,
Yes.
he was at that really hard stage of knowing, but not knowing. So there is that stage of Alzheimer's and dementia where people are kind of lingering, and there's moments where they don't realize, but there's a lot of moments when they do realize. So he would say to me, my brain doesn't work anymore. And he felt stupid. And he would say that, I feel so stupid. I don't remember. I don't know what's going on. And so he was in that kind of stage of knowing and not knowing, right up until he did die. So that is a really hard stage for people here to be, and for families, because of course, when people don't realize anymore, they don't recognize family, or they're in that state of Alzheimer's, their personalities can often change. People can become very aggressive. And I think for my dad, it was interesting. I think for the last 2 weeks before he died, he would do this weird kind of ritual around 4 PM. He would go out and circle the house. And it was almost like he was saying goodbye. Now that I look back, he would spend a lot of time out by his shed in those important places. And I think people do have that understanding of when their time is about to shift or end. So yeah, so that is the work that we're doing a little bit sooner with people at Cassellholme. Almost not as soon as I would like, but again, this is a really hard thing to talk about. And we live in a society that really denies death. Up until 50, 60 years ago, we cared for our dying at home. You died at home. You didn't go to a funeral home. You died at home, and we left you there for a few days, and we honored your physical body, and we honored who you were. And then we buried you. So things, it's a different world now. So death doulas do that important work of helping people plan exactly what, and there's not always those opportunities, right? Which is why I think those conversations are really important while we're still able to have those conversations.
I'm thinking, Tracy, that this description, or this job title, spiritual wellness and cultural support lead, should be a designation in all retirement homes, because this is the reality, right? And I'm thinking back, of course, to my own experience with my mom, who had dementia.
Yep.
And how that would have been really helpful. To get through and to help her have a better quality of life right to the very end.
Absolutely. And again, there's 240 residents here. And so it's not just about me doing that work. It's also training our staff and helping our staff to understand how important they are when people are actively dying here. And we've seen it all. We've seen people who are deemed palliative in the morning and die in the afternoon. We've had people here. There was a woman here. Oh my gosh, she didn't have any food or water for 21 days. And she resisted death. She had lived in a place of denial about her life. And it was, on that last final day, that family was completely exhausted after 21 days. And one of our wonderful RNs climbed into bed with her and held her and rocked her and kept giving her permission to go. And eventually she finally did pass into spirit, but it was a long haul, right? So it's everyone does this very, very differently. And there's always that hope that we're going to have time. And I think that's the piece that's so important for all of us, right? We think we're going to have time. We think we're going to have time to have those conversations, to do that end of life work. And we don't have time. We don't know, right? We have no idea when our life is going to come to an end. So I think those conversations are really important to start having. And so that is the work that I do here. I've also, I've also experienced a lot of hospice care, and I think, my dad died in September and my ex-husband died the following May. So within 6 months, we'd had two pretty significant losses and two completely different deaths. So my dad's death was really well done. I can say that there was no regret. He knew exactly how much I loved him, and I know exactly how much he loved me. My grief journey has been completely different because of the work that I did with him ahead of time. When I look at my daughter, who has now lost her dad, and someone who could not have those hard conversations, he again, just, up until a week before he died, he phoned his boss and said, I'm probably going to come back next week, but I'll have to be part-time. He was lying in hospice, again, dying a really beautiful death because they do it so well over there. But again, living in denial and not willing to have hard conversations. So we didn't even know if he wanted to be cremated. We didn't know if he wanted to be buried. I often joke that he worshiped the devil, but now we've buried him in a Catholic cemetery because we weren't able to have those conversations. He just was not able. And when I looked at his family and how hard it was for his mom to have those conversations, she couldn't either, right? It was too late. And so it was a painful death. Dorothy? Oh, you got to unmute.
I was wondering, and it's really hard to have those conversations.
Yeah.
My plan is to have a legacy binder, but I haven't done it yet. That's my thing I'm going to write down today. I want it complete so that my family knows exactly what I want, music, everything.
Absolutely. And that is so important, right? And that's that really hard conversation, which is why, I have these tools that I use that I'm also happy to share with people and have conversations around what are those pieces that you need to do? What does your family need to know about what you want? I knew exactly what hymns my dad wanted. I knew who was going to speak at his funeral. I know one of those questions on that life review is, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want your grandchildren to know? What is your piece of advice for those little kids, right? And it was so interesting. And I think we caught it just at the right moment with my dad. And his response to that was, I want my grandchildren to believe in themselves. I want them to have confidence in their abilities. And I don't want them to be fearful of life. Like, what incredible legacy to be able to offer to those kids, right? Who are little right now, but I recorded his voice and I recorded him saying that so that they will have that forever, right? They will know exactly what he wanted them to, those words that he wanted to live by. But it also is time to talk about regret in our life, right? Like we need to let go of a lot of that stuff. I really believe that talking about death and thinking about death is really enriching your life, because again, it's about living in a really present way, living in a way that you're fulfilled. And I think when we start to talk about death a little bit more and end of life, it makes us realize just how precious every single day is. So again, that legacy work is so very important, right? What do we want to be remembered for? How am I living my life fully so that when I do die, those conversations, can happen. People will remember because I've been really clear and because I've lived my absolute best life. So legacy work is so important. That's on my list of things to talk about. Do you want to stop there? And are there questions that anybody has that I'll let you handle that part, Harriet.
I have just one comment, just
Yeah.
in terms of death, especially, dealing with our elderly parents. I mean, when they lose abilities, I find those like a death, but they're still alive, but you see them, oh, now they can't use a walker anymore, or, you can see their mind going, those sort of things. So what do you suggest for the people that are going through that? Is it a matter of just talking to someone else or just grieving it and moving on?
Well, grief is a whole other world, right? Grief, grief doesn't, my experience anyways, and I'm certainly not a grief expert, but I had to stop saying to people, I know how you feel, because I had no idea. I had no clue until I actually lost my dad, because he was the first person that I really lost. And I've learned so much about that, right? So, so again, you're right. Grief and loss happen all along the road, all along our journey, right? With ourselves, with our parents. I look at my mom, who had the best memory ever, and now all of a sudden she's asking questions and I'm like, what? This is not normal, but she's almost 80, and things are shifting for her, right? So there's huge grief, huge loss. As we go through this with our families, with our parents, with our friends, because again, early onset things are happening sooner in our world now. So again, I think, it's all about talking about it. It's about finding someone that gets it. It's about, even joining a grief recovery method group. There's all kinds of them that are being offered, because grief, is so layered, and grief happens throughout our entire life. Like I'm still grieving losing my church family. I mean, I'm grieving a dog I lost 5 years ago. I can hardly think about her still, because it's just right here. I grieve, we grieve for dreams that didn't happen for us, right? We had a really clear plan about what our life might look like, and all of a sudden, that's not our reality anymore. So I would really encourage people, again, to talk about their grief, to join a group, to join a support group, because all of it is so, so real, and it affects our physical well-being, like stress, grief, and loss, because we're surrounded by it all the time. I don't know if that's helpful. I think, watching parents, as those stages unfold, it's really hard. We've started a support group at Cassellholme. We've done 2 rounds of it. The most important tool that I've seen come out of that is people hearing you're not alone. For families to hear, that was my experience too. And I'm sorry you're going through that. Or to hear someone say, my mom did it, but it happened this way. So again, that would be my encouragement to people. Hi, Jill.
Sorry, it's Jill. I have a question. I'm probably, just because of my age, a little closer to the end of my life than some of the rest of you. How do you engage your family into this process? I have a file that is all put together with everything I think my children will need to have at their fingertips when I die, along with how I would like to die and all of those kinds of things I've thought through for myself. But my kids know where the file is, but to engage them to go through it with you is another challenge. Now, I did, my son actually, who I hadn't seen for a year and a half. I mean, there are some positives from COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I got a hug like I thought when I saw him a couple of weeks ago. I thought he'd never let go. I thought, oh my goodness. But he brought up the issue. So I think COVID has been a positive for him, because he thought, when will I see my mom again? And I'm fine. I mean, there's no health issues. But how do you engage your kids in this process? Because I think it's important, not only to do yourself, but with your family.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know what? The kids are the ones that resist. This is what we're discovering here. What I've discovered in the work that I do in the community as well. Children, my age group and younger, they don't want to talk about it. Because I think people, again, we're a society that denies death. We've, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about end of life. And you got to kind of wear them down. I think in some ways, I think it needs to be, we've had family meetings with my siblings, and we've talked about it with my mom. Mm-hmm. And my mom has had to say, this is really important to me. This mm-hmm. conversation is so important to me. I need you to clearly hear, what I want for myself. Sometimes I've gone and sat with families who need to have those conversations, even with someone like you, Jill, who is not ill, who is in good physical shape. And I've gone and sat with families to have those hard conversations, not connected to Cassellholme, right? So again, sometimes having someone who is a death doula come and be part of that conversation, it just helps to kind of mediate that conversation. It just makes it a little bit easier, because people do resist. They think that if I talk about death, I'm going to make it happen. I'm jinxing myself. But again, I think we can really unpack some of those things with families and help them, knowing sometimes it's just hearing my story. Sometimes it's just sharing my story about what my experience was. And it really does help people to give them some context for what it might look like. So that would be, you know, I think, again, it's wearing people down. It's talking about it to anybody that will listen, and really helping people to understand that how absolutely important it is to you. Anybody else?
It's Debbie. I did have a question, but I think you just mostly answered it in your reply to Jill, because I was wondering, you know, whether you work outside of Cassellholme and whether you are for hire, let's say, to not just sit down with the person, but to help mediate with the family. So you've answered that.
Okay.
And I'm just, you know, curious to know if a person was to choose that avenue, having someone like yourself come in with the family, what kind of money are we talking? What would the expense be for that?
So you know what, I actually don't do it as a business by any stretch. I do it because I think it's really important. So I'm really happy to sit with families and to do this work, because I just can't imagine doing anything differently. So I'm really happy to do that with people, only because, again, I know what it would have looked like if I hadn't done it, and that scares me. So again, I just think it's the most important piece of work we have to do right now. And I think there's, you know, when we talk about medically assisted death as we move forward, you know, that has been, you know, when someone does choose medically assisted death, you know, we've had those 10 days from point of assessment to the actual dying, and so those 10 days are really wonderful opportunities, right, for families to do that work that is so important. So people that haven't seen children in 2 years or haven't talked to a child in 10 years, right, we've got those opportunities to really resolve those really important pieces. So that's kind of been the model that we've kind of been using here in my work at Cassellholme, to really start helping families understand that time, you know, we've got to do this work right now so that we can fully live, right?
Right.
So I'm really happy to do that work with people.
Well, bless you.
Tracy?
Bless you.
Tracy, I would like to just, we have had Jana Brogan and Tracy Biggers on, who
Yep.
are both death doulas. I don't know if they charge a fee or not, but I just want people to know that. And also Darlene Tripp is legacy. She does legacy work. I know that. So
Absolutely.
I would share that with everybody, just
Yeah.
so that you have, because Tracy's only one person and dealing with 240 people at Cassellholme. So I don't know what her time frame is, but I just thought I'd say that.
Yeah,
Roseanne?
absolutely.
No, I'm good. Thanks. She
Okay.
answered my questions.
Okay, good. Anyone else? Okay, go ahead, Tracy.
Okay, so what else do we want to talk about? I want to talk a little bit about medically assisted death. If people feel like that. Have we had anyone come and talk about medically assisted death?
Yes,
Have we?
we
Okay.
have a few times.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk about it quickly as a lay person who has been part of, I think, 45 medically assisted deaths now. Only because, again, I think it's not for everybody, and it's a hard conversation to have. But it's one of those pieces that it's important your family knows, because the world around medically assisted death, of course, is changing, where at some point, I think in the near future, people who are powers of attorney are going to be able to fulfill those wishes for people when when they're no longer able to have those conversations. So again, you know, we offer it at Cassellholme. There's some great doctors in North Bay that certainly do this very, very well. Dr. Lecky being kind of the one who has brought that around, that the change around what that looks like for people. We have now, you know, that 10 days is now less for people. You know, we recently, heartbreaking story of a woman who was dying in the hospice, 32 years old, who wanted, who finally chose medically assisted death, and we were able to offer it within 3 days. But we did have to move her out of the hospice in order to do that, because they don't do that at hospice, but they don't do that at hospice, not because of any kind of religious beliefs, because they offer end of life care just in a really different way. So I think there's been this whole issue around hospice. So medically assisted death certainly is something that I think for people who do choose it, we've done again end of life work in a really, really great way, while we've got that time to really look at people when they have those 10 days, or when they have those few days in between making their decision. I've never seen anyone change their mind. I've never seen anyone waver. I think when people make those decisions, they're thoughtfully done. And so it's again, it's a way for families to still have an opportunity to have those conversations, and for people not to suffer. I think that's the most important piece around end of life, is how we manage people's pain. It's so tough to watch people die when there's physical pain. And so again, I think those pieces around when we've offered that medical assisted death piece, again, it's just really important time to do legacy work and to share with people what they want to be remembered for, right? I think that time, it's just remarkable to see how it unfolds for families when they really grab that opportunity and do that fine work. I don't know if people have questions about medically assisted death for me, or around what it looks like, or how we do it at Cassellholme, or what happens when we go to people's homes and offer.
Tracy, I think we have had
Okay.
speakers in the past, but you know, it's been a while. You know, we've got almost 2 years of COVID in here. And have there been any changes, or sure, maybe just go through the process and
Sure, yeah.
It's not as foreign to us, but we can always refresh our memories, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one I was part of was a woman here who was 99 years old and wasn't dying. Of course, she's dying, but she wasn't imminently dying. And so it was really important to her that as a United Church minister, she really wanted me to understand why she was choosing medically assisted death. And I'll never forget it as long as I live. She said to me, you know what, I've had a really good life, but I'm 99. I don't like living here. She said, every time I stand up, I pee. She said, I can't see, I can't hear. There is nothing that I enjoy about my life anymore. And so she chose medically assisted death. And the night before she died, we put her in, she chose what she wanted to wear, what she wanted to be buried in. We made sure that happened for her. You know, we had a lovely meal together. We had family with her. Her grandson was really struggling. So we offered great support to him. She got to choose who was going to be with her when she took her last breath. Dr. Lecky came in, as he does, with his bottle of scotch, which is always a nice touch for all of us. Again, those really important, hard conversations were able to happen with family. But again, for me, it was, I thought, don't you want to get to 100? She had no interest, right? She really was able to say, I'm really good. I'm really done. I value my life. I value what my life brought to this world. And I'm really good for this to happen. So again, when it happens here, medically assisted death, you know, the only thing that can really go wrong is issues with veins, because as we age, of course, those things do change. And so in the morning, we have there's a specialist, a nurse that comes from, where does she come from? community care access, I guess is what where that is. And she's a specialist at putting in an intravenous. We put one in each hand just in case. And people pick their time of death. We make the room beautiful. We make it so that everything they had hoped for is there. And we have the music they want. We have a beautiful space. We say our goodbyes. You know, the actual injections, they come in with, it looks like a fishing tackle box. And I don't want this to sound like I'm minimizing this, because I'm not. I think these pieces are really important for people to understand from a layperson just what it looks like, because we can spend time with doctors and all of those pieces, but for someone who has seen it, I think there's some great beauty in how this unfolds for people. So again, we often sing, and no one really wants to hear me singing, but we sing. We pick people's favorite music, and we pray. Often, you know, we spend a lot of time in prayer with family before, if that is what they want. You know, we do all that really fine work. That first injection does make people sleepy. So people yawn and they fall asleep. Often they start to snore, which always brings the tension down a little bit, because again, it's a really hard time. We're watching someone leave us, and then they flush the line with another injection, and then that next injection does stop the heart. So the whole process is very, very short. And the body does physically change quite rapidly while we're sitting there. And at Cassellholme, you know, there's several of us that have to be there for the legal parts of it. Everything is timed very well. And then we sit with that body for as long as we need to. We wash the body. The families are able to wash the body if they want to be part of that process. Some people like to anoint the body. We do all those pieces that are really important. But again, it's all figured out ahead of time because we've had those conversations. The great thing about what happens after that is we get to decompress. We get to unpack what that looked like for all of us. And Dr. Leckie and Dr. Nelson, Dr. Gauthier, they always say we always do things just a little bit different afterwards, because we learn from these experiences all the time. So again, that has been my experience. Almost everyone that I've sat with in the community that chooses medically assisted death, they don't want to do it at home. Again, there's great fear around what our bodies do when we die. And I think they, as much as we say, you know, for me, I know exactly where I want to die, if that's where my life comes, you know, if that's how it ends for me, but people almost always choose hospital. The ones that I've done in the community, they've chosen to do that. Just again, I think a fear out of what their physical body will look like. So it is a really beautiful death compared to a lot of deaths of people that I've sat with who either have died alone, and a lot of people here die alone. We can't manage pain, or lungs fill and people choke. And that's a really horrible, hard way to die. So again, that has been my experience with medically assisted death, that I think those are important pieces that people need to hear about.
Any
Questions?
questions?
Thoughts or questions around that?
Yes, I do, Tracy, it's Anna. Does a person need to be like compos mentis, make the choice themselves for medically assisted death then? It can't be an individual, say, who is totally in dementia, totally irrelevant in terms of what they are able to do. The choice must be made by the individual.
Absolutely. And again, you know, the question they ask the person needs to be able to still answer that question. Now that is changing, and it's changing very quickly. We had someone at Cassellholme who had huge mental health issues, who really struggled, who has been asking for medically assisted death as long as I've been here. That's all she really wanted. She had no family, she had no children, she never married. She really didn't want to be here any longer. And that process took a lot longer. She still had to be able to answer that question day of by the doctor who asked the question, do you want me to assist you with your death? And if you can't answer the question at this point, it's still not a possibility for you. Again, I think that is changing very, very quickly in our world. And I think very soon there's going to be great change around that, because again, we've got people, you know, there's people sitting here in wheelchairs who haven't seen a family member in 5 years, who have no idea what's going on. They sit in their chair and that's their life. They have, you know, and it's heartbreaking to watch, because when you are in the thick of Alzheimer's and you no longer are able to communicate with anyone, and those are hard visits. Those are hard for families. Stop coming because they don't know what to do, right? Like, why am I going to come see my mom? She has no idea who I am. You know, she can't look at me. She can't have a conversation. So what can I do, right? So again, why those support groups here are so very important, right? But you absolutely have to be able to answer that question still. Anybody else?
I find that
I have a
really,
question.
really, okay,
Comment.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Deb.
So how do you talk to family members who you just said, like, I really don't want to go because she doesn't know who I am. Like, how do you approach when you see family members come in, you know, maybe once in a while? How do you approach them to say, maybe you should be coming more often, or why aren't you coming? Is it they don't, it's not that they don't love the person any less, but they just don't know how to go there. And
Yep.
do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, and you know this, you've had this experience, Deb. I mean,
I know.
you
That's
know
why
exactly.
I want to share that with others.
Absolutely, because it's really, really hard, right? So again, we really encourage people to still come. You know, hold your mom's hand, wash her face, read to her. You know, what was her favorite? What did she like to hear? Did she like, you know, a lot of people want to hear scripture. A lot of people want to hear, you know, there's a gentleman here, he has no clue, but I know from his family, I know he loves baseball stories. So we encourage people to come and sit and we read from that book of baseball stories. He loves, you know, it's making a difference. They say the hearing is the last to go. Being present, being here, people know. I do believe this. I believe that people still know that you're here, and whether it's 5 minutes or a half an hour, you know, it's also about you, right? It's about you not having guilt and remorse because you're not coming and you're not able to come, right? So I think, again, sitting in a support group with 11 other, it's almost all women that come. Let me tell you, you know, our support groups have been full of women because they are the caregivers. They're the people that are here daily or once a week or once a month. And so we give people those tips and tools on what you can be doing still with your loved one. And then we help you talk a lot about the guilt when you can't come anymore, right? And that's okay. I mean, you have to, sometimes we have to give people permission, right? If we've tried to give them the tools, if we've tried to help them, sometimes it's really painful and it's just really difficult, right? Especially when people become aggressive, that's a whole other world, right? So we have behavioral supports on staff here, but when people do change so drastically, having my role here, I think, is now a better way for people to have one-on-one time with someone who can maybe give them some of that support and can maybe go upstairs and say, let's sit with her together. Let's sit with your mom together. You know what? Here's what I can do. Don't be afraid to hold her hand, right? Like, don't be fear. I mean, it's unpacking some of the fear as well, right? Because I don't know this person anymore. She's not familiar to me. She doesn't even look like her anymore. So I think that's how we're making a difference. I think that's how we're starting to change how we're doing things differently here.
Heather, you have to unmute.
I have two comments. First of all, in terms of people who have severe dementia, I have a friend whose wife hasn't known him for about 10 years and he visits regularly. And I said, what do you do? And he said, I sit down, I hold her hand. And this guy is not a singer, I have to tell you that. And I sing all the old songs that we used to go through. That's what he does every visit. There's no sense having any conversation. And so that's just a comment to people who may be in that boat. I just wanted to make a comment and actually a question. My husband died 10 years ago. He died at home, which was his wish. And please don't send me back to the hospital kind of comment. But he planned his wedding and I had his wedding. Well, that's kind of actually how I felt about my husband. I tend to be a person who doesn't have loose ends. I really try not to have loose ends. So when he died, there really weren't a lot of loose ends to tie up. I called him my 25-year gift. I had 2 husbands in my life, but he was my 25-year gift. So that shows you how we felt about each other. Anyway, he had the funeral director. He says, I think it's time for you to call Jerry in. And we sat down and actually we reminisced because both of us had a history with Jerry and laughed for 45 minutes. And then Jerry said, well, I think it's time, Harold, that we kind of planned his funeral. And he planned his funeral. And I have to tell you, from my point of view, when my husband died, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew who the pallbearers were going to be. It was it was so hard for me. And I mean, when a person dies at home, that's great for that. But I was so physically and mentally exhausted and emotionally exhausted that to have that done, to have the obituary done, to have everything done was such a gift. Now, here's what my dilemma was. We had lots of fun because he was a fun kind of a guy. And I didn't know whether to reminisce because I didn't want to make it difficult for him to die by reminiscing about all the good things and all the fun we had. Okay. So about the only thing I said to him, I said, you're going to be the last man in my life. And he said, Heather, with your energy, there'll be other men. And I said, no, I can't imagine anybody loving me the way you love me. So that was kind of about the only thing, but I still think, should we have reminisced? So that's my question.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Thank you for that. I think, you know, when I think about some of the beautiful deaths that I've sat with, again, I can only share my experience here. We had a woman who, again, this was the one person that was deemed palliative in the morning. And I sat with her daughter in the morning and she was sitting across from me. I could see her mom, she couldn't. And she was holding her mom's hand. And I said to her, tell me about your mom. Tell me the stories of your mom. Tell me who she was. I want to know, what did she do? What did she, you know? And so this woman is sitting and she's sharing these stories of her mom's life. She's talking about how much she loved her mom. And again, these incredible stories about this woman's life that I had no idea. And her mom had died. And we're sitting talking and I let her go. I let her talk. We talked. She kept going for probably 15 more minutes. And then I told her, you know, your mom has died. And what a beautiful way for her mom to die, hearing how much she was loved, hearing what a difference she made, not only in her daughter's life, but how she changed the world, right? We all changed the world. We all have huge impact on our world. And so she got to die hearing those stories. And again, I would hope that you don't in any way beat yourself up around this piece. You know what, we do what we know, we do what we think is best always. But again, I think that's a beautiful way to leave this world, is hearing those stories of how you've made an impact. How have you changed my life? You know, one of the best tools that I was ever given when I went away to school to be a death doula, we had to write a letter to the person who is alive that is the most meaningful person in our life right now at this very moment. So you need to write a letter, and I would encourage you all to do this. Think about that person that means the most that is alive and write that letter to them right now. Tell them exactly the impact they've had on your life, because you don't know what tomorrow brings. So write that letter, take some time and tell them how much you love them. Tell them how they've changed your world. Tell them what you've learned from them, right? And again, you know, for me to be able to share that with my husband and say, you know what, I don't know what tomorrow brings, but here's the piece that you've given me. And now it's done. If something happened, you know, because it's about us surviving this as well, right? So how do we survive, excuse me, and making sure all our loose ends are tied up with our relationships with people, right? So I've done that with everybody in my world. I've written them a letter and I've shared it with them, and they hate it. They hate it. They hate listening to me. I can't even have dinner parties anymore because now, I mean, all we talk about, it always ends up, we talk about death and dying. People want to share their stories. People want to talk about the people we love that we've lost. That keeps them alive for us, right? Sharing their memories and our stories. I mean, I can't think of anything else better than talking about my dad. And recently I had the best experience. I got to share it with my mom. I was burying someone and I didn't know them well. And I got to the cemetery and of course it's COVID. There was 10 of us. And this woman was introducing me. And of course she's like, this is Greg Brewer's daughter. Well, 3 out of those people had all taught with him. And they were like, oh, can I tell you a Greg Brewer story? And I was like, it was just the most beautiful moment, right? So sharing our stories and talking about those people we're missing so desperately, our moms, our dads, our sisters and brothers, like people we're missing, right? So write that letter, you know, I've done 11, I think, of them. And I try to do, and of course it changes as we get older. And so we have to rewrite letters, but it's a great tool to be able to share with people and say, this is how important you are to me, because we don't know. We have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring.
We have another question here.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I want to work within your time,
That's
Tracy.
okay.
But, go ahead, Maureen.
I want to say 2 things about this, having gone through this with my mom and through dementia. Number one, I certainly came to the conclusion that it's my ego that wants her to recognize me. So when you can get rid of that part and realize she always enjoyed people, she enjoyed having you there, just go.
Yeah.
The other thing is she lost the ability to speak early on. Whatever part of her brain was affected by the strokes did that. And she couldn't speak for a long, long time. But if you put music on or she went to a Christmas carol sing, her mouth was moving to the words. So that memory is there. Music lasts long after. And I would say just go and be with them. We sat with her and she was in a nursing home in Kirkland Lake. We had a room to ourselves. My aunt and my husband and I were with her all the time. The minister from the church, who had never known her, came and sat with us. And, you know, we just talked to her and held her hand. And I think she had an idea we were there. That's what I like to think. So don't be afraid to go.
I agree. Thank you for that. I think that's so important. And again, it is that just go, right? You know, it's amazing here because when I offer worship on Sunday afternoons, there'll be 50 people and we're all in the auditorium and most of them are asleep. And then we get to the Lord's Prayer and it's hysterical. Everybody wakes up and everybody knows the words to the Lord's Prayer. And we all offer the Lord's Prayer. It's an absolute riot because they sleep through anything else I have to say. But again, it's that memory, right? It's those words. And again, music is huge, right? Like my dad wanted to hear the Kingston Trio. Dear Lord, I tell you, we listened to that. I couldn't bear it anymore. But now I'm not sad anymore when I hear those pieces of music, right? I listen to them with joy, and I know that we've done a really fine job with sending him off, right? And I've also got some great CDs that I use with people who are dying that really offer affirmation, right? We put them on, people hear, you know, I was loved and I loved deeply and I was a good person. Like, you know, it's just a great tool we have to offer people so that they're hearing those important words, right? That their life is validated and celebrated and honored for whatever it looked like.
Oh my goodness, Tracy.
I can talk for days about this.
I know, that's why we're going to have you back.
Yeah.
I hope you will agree to that. But I have to say, this is you're very, you know, so aptly named this the starting point for hard conversations. But you know, once you get started, I can see there's so much here and so much it's just so invaluable. I can't tell you what a gift this is today. And, you know, we have 80 members and I want everyone to remember that this is recorded and you can go back to this and listen to it again. It's on the website. It will be on the website. And Tracy, I'll send it to you if you want.
Sure, absolutely.
And I want to talk to you about that too.
Sure.
But we only have a few minutes left, so just accept my deepest gratitude from all of us here today. It's just amazing presentation.
Well, and I think
I know it's coming from an open heart, and that
it is. Well, And I think just experience, right? I mean, I am not, you know, I'm not an expert. Well, I'm an expert on some things, I think, but again, I want to just talk about the Before I Die project, because I think some of you are going to come over to Castle.
Yeah. And
So,
who's going over? I'm just going to have a look at the hands, or maybe people joining us there. So
sure, that would be
yeah,
great.
and just a reminder to park in the visitors parking lot and then walk to the front entrance.
So the Before I Die project, again, is a way that we're trying to engage the community. So I was part of a webinar that the Niagara Hospice had put on about these Before I Die, I Want To, right? Before I Die projects. There's 5,000 of them in the world. It started with this woman who had lost somebody, and she found a wall. She made chalkboards and she wrote, Before I Die, I Want To, and encouraged the community to come and think about what are the important pieces we need to do still before we die. So I thought, well, this is a great way. So I came to our maintenance team here at Cassellholme and said, I want something I can put on the Cassellholme trailer. I want to cart it around and have people think about those hard conversations. And let's start talking about what are the pieces we need to do before we die. So these guys are amazing here. They built this thing on wheels. It's beautiful. And we launched it at the Hike for Hospice over at the hospice. We had people fill it out. We've taken it to the market. We're taking it to the university. I think we're going to try to take it to the mall. And we're putting people that are really gifted facilitators, people that can really have hard conversations. There's a group of death ambassadors in North Bay who are incredible young people who are taking courses at the university and about death. There's a great course I'm taking right now at the university called Death and Spirituality with Dr. Susan Strigley.
Yes,
and,
she's been a guest.
She's wonderful. She's wonderful. So we're taking this death. Well, someone called it the death cube the other day, which I didn't like. It sounded like something out of Star Wars. But it just makes you start to think about what are the pieces of work I need to do? What's important to me, you know, before I die. So we've got it on wheels. We've got it outside. We've cleaned it off. We're encouraging people to come and write something on it. And then we do take photographs of it so that we can remember it. And we're kind of archiving some of it. So again, it's a really important conversation starter. The other thing I just want to mention is I'm hosting a death cafe at the hospice, which people are invited to come to. We're not calling it a death cafe because that's a hard term for people, but it's an opportunity, an unfacilitated opportunity for people to come and talk about death. And that's happening on October 23rd. You could write to me at Cassellholme if you wanted to, or call me, and I'll give you more details around that, because again, I think it's a lovely opportunity for people just to sit and gather in a lovely, safe space and start talking a little bit more about death.
Why don't you send that to me, Tracy, and then I can pass it on.
Absolutely.
We're going to be having a weekly newsletter, so.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Sure. So please do, if you would like to come over there, we're going to gather, I think at 10:30. Is that right, Harriet?
Yeah, 10:30, give people a chance just to get organized.
Yeah. So if you're standing, actually, if you're standing looking at Cassellholme, that roundabout area at the front doors, just to the left of that, if you're facing Cassellholme, there's a little kind of courtyard, and that's actually where we've got it right now. So please, you can park on the road, you can park in the visitor parking, and just it's a very short little schlep over. But I'd love to see everybody.
Do you want us to be masked or not?
You're outdoors, so it's completely up to you. It's not regulated outdoors, but if you feel more comfortable with a mask on, then please do. Yeah.
Okay. And again, Tracy, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime.
I don't know what to say. This has been just a phenomenal presentation, and thank you to everybody who contributed today too.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.